before you dive into the idea of even thinking about signs from divinity, see, ask yourself one simple question. What makes you sure that something is necessarily a sign from divinity? See, back in old times, when religion started creating its uh, influence on people, amplifying their misery and their confusion, usually miserable people are also confused because confusion is part of misery, because misery means nothing in your life works, or very few people uh, serve you, very few things that you have may actually help you, but ultimately a lot of things don't simply work. The question is, which of these things should you give up? Because misery means you're a sponge, you're open to all energies available, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, right? Because most of the energies won't serve you anyways, especially if it's from toxic people. So when it comes to religion, well, religion in time, the way it was used, not the philosophy on its own, but the way it was used, it caused a huge amount of confusion in people, because how can you be evil since birth, and whatever you do, you'll be punished severely by the so-called God of Love? Not sure about the other two religions, but, well, they all have their own quirks ultimately. So the point is, see, people back in the times, if they were lost in the forest while on their way to a town or something, if they would hear a crowd, they would think it's a sign from divinity, it's an omen or something. But their only conviction in most cases was that they heard that from other people who were supposedly better than them or more perspective or the such, probably shaman or the such. But, shamans are shamans, they may have their perception or not, but if someone has a better perception than you, it is still in a way irrelevant, or it should be irrelevant to you what they say, because when they speak from their own experiences, if they are outside of your perception sphere or your own, let's say, experiences, right? If it is beyond your experience level, it's only gonna be nothing but stories, right? So before you start freaking your mind too much about signs from, divinity, ask yourself what makes you sure that those necessarily are. Because given the fact that a lot of us are confused each and every day, if you walk by in a park and suddenly, well, there's no one around, nothing that may apparently happen, but there is one single crow somewhere above and it starts cawing, and, well, most likely it's looking at you, well, probably you'll be inclined to think that something bad may happen, right? If you see a lot of birds, flocking together and flying frantically, some people might think that an earthquake or something cataclysmical may happen, right? But you're only becoming a bit prey of your, how to put it, imagination. One way to sort this, although again it is not 100%, but when these thoughts happen, if they are surrounded or let's say shrouded in fear, most likely it's your imagination or your mind playing tricks on you, because you've been programmed already to think about the worst that can happen, right? It's always panic, doom and gloom and the such. So honestly, it's gonna be simply like that, right? When you are surrounded by that state, well, you don't know if it's gonna happen or not. Typically, when it happens as a, let's say, a sign from divinity, it will keep repeating itself. Now, so many events in general, when you look at them, seem to be repeating, or there seem to be some of those situations which may be misinterpreted as so-called glitches in the matrix. But one has to understand the simple fact. Signs from the so-called divinity or creation, whatever you want to call it, well, they will always happen. These signs will be here and there, but first and foremost, you must detach yourself from this idea that the universe works in your favor. Okay, this is a very great poison, which unfortunately thins a lot of people nowadays, because they think that the universe works in their favor. This is kind of woke agenda thing, because no one likes you in this world. Most likely your parents didn't, or well, in some people's cases maybe they did, but they weren't capable of giving you all the emotions and the such that you needed, right? So the point is, in order to exploit things like these, confusion, lack of knowledge, right, and people's passion towards and natural tendency towards mysticism, woke agenda, which is more than a few thousand years old anyways, has always made use of all sorts of irrelevant and very superficial things to be pinpointed as, highly spiritual and such. Because usually people, like in all cases, people who promote the woke agenda, they're just dum-dums who don't know anything about life. They don't have any sensitivity towards life. They kind of lack empathy almost entirely. And well, they're just confused, lost souls as well. So obviously it's easy for them to pretend and keep pretending, and be in cahoots and dance with the system. But signs and portents, whatever they were called, these will happen. But you have to understand they're not happening necessarily to you, okay? To you specifically. A lot of people get, mind poisoned by this, How many of these have you been hearing that, the universe works in your favor? You may attract, let's say, through, well, I'm not a fan of the flow of distraction or law of attraction as people call it, but sometimes, depending on your karma, depending on your state, you may attract some, let's say, slightly favorable situations than they may happen in general, let's say in a very extremely far-fetched manner. But the simple point is, don't focus too much on those. If it happens, just move further. And well, don't waste time comparing yourself, don't waste time, thinking that it could have been worse. Because when you identify too much with the idea that it could have been worse, well, comparison is gonna become more and more unavoidable in your behavior. And comparison is a thief of joy, right? Even if you think that things could have been worse, well, that's always the case. Anything that can happen, it could have been better and it could have been worse, right? Focus on what happened and enjoy it, because life is too short to think and to waste on thinking about the past too much and the future. Thinking about the past is a good thing from time to time, because things that have happened, and well, one needs to remember those, right, from time to time, and especially learn and relearn some lessons, remember certain things. That is the most important part, right? But the future hasn't happened. It's just a range of possibilities, actually, not a sum. It's a range of possibilities, and that's it. So when it comes to symbols and the such, don't rush into interpreting things, right? Because if your awareness is very low, it is very primitive and mundane, world oriented, you're not going to be able to identify anything in most cases. Because birds cawing or flying in a certain pattern, meeting the right person at the right time, see, everything in this life, in a way, to a certain extent, is a sense of synchronicity. Because everything in this universe functions in unison. It functions at a certain level of perfection, right? It functions in unison, in communion with each and every other element, right? If we humans keep pretending that we are separated from creation and we will always be so, and we have to fight for whatever other external sources, that's not going to help you much, because ultimately, well, you're just going to live a stupid lie, you're going to invest into it, and you're going to die a miserable person. This is how usually things happen, right? So don't focus too much on whatever can be interpretable as a possibility, a symbol, or a message from the divine, right? Because when it happens naturally and your awareness is, let's say, at a certain level, you know how to breathe in a certain way and be at a certain state of life, you will feel those in a natural way, and no emotion or cerebral process will actually hinder you, right? So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Feel free to view any other content on the channel. Take care, enjoy life. Ferenc John Forward signing out.